Welcome to the watch list by special request. I'm trying to keep good on my promises of, giving personal technical analysis. If you ask for it, I'm happy to do it. While I can, sometimes I get a little overwhelmed, so I apologize if I can't get to some, but for the most part, I'll do my best to get to all of them. User Nicolay5577 requested to take a look at BAH. And just from a technical analyst point of view, I know there's some things in the news that should have been good and others that were kind of bad. And then we get this massive drop, just insane on the daily chart. Even we had this nice little bar yesterday here, kind of in an area where it still has some downside risk, but we've got a couple of support areas. So let's dig in a little bit. I'm going to go out to a monthly chart just to kind of show you what this thing's all about. I mean, that is one hell of a long-term bull trend, but this is some recent volatility, obviously. And in this part of the leg here, you see that it's gone a bit parabolic. And typically when things move fast, now this isn't very fast, this is a monthly chart, you end up giving about half the trend back sometimes when you have a reversal or a pullback, and then things tend to resume. So we like to point out liquidity zones when that happens to figure out where the buyers would likely be and where to look for a potential reversal. From a technical standpoint, that's kind of how we play the game, essentially. Let's have a look at this. So we have this part of the trend here. This is our upper range of halfback, I like to call it that, but if you were to measure this leg here and this leg here, this would be a little bit outsized. It'd be about a 1.25 measured move out of this, and then a sudden drop with a massive bearish engulfing on the monthly. But here on the end of the month here, and we're getting close to the end of January, we should see an inverted hammer here close and give us potential for a reversal. Now to the weekly chart. We can see that a little better now. We can see that that's kind of the low end of half back. We can see price found liquidity here, and there were some buyers interested here. So now I'm looking at a range where yesterday even we had this little pop back up almost to half of this trend back, and then we found some resistance. So digging into the daily chart, we can find that this is essentially the attempt at getting half back of this trend here. We call this the dead cat bounce. Typically when we have a massive drop, we get one here, and then we get a reversion trade back to that as resistance. So we got halfway from here to here. And then we end up with an attempt to grab half of that back, and there were some sellers waiting here. So liquidity is plain to see. You can look back here. It was a previous support area. Now it's a resistance area, and we didn't even quite get there yesterday. So in this case, we end up looking for consolidation, and sometimes this will take a while before things get underway. If you look at the previous price action, you can see that consolidation tends to take a little time before you get moves out of this particular equity. So looking at our current time frame, we're expecting much of the same, probably within this range between these two LZs. And there's about a halfway point here where there's some indecision that's likely to take place. So watch this for some range here. Worst case scenario, if we break the support level, we could test all the way back down to these lows here. That is the downside risk, maybe even down into the $90 area, which is pretty scary, but I don't think it's going to go that far. Looking at support here, if we hold this range and we start to accumulate here, we can get some continuation and finish the business of a half back, at least in the short term, which is right around 150 here. And then if things kind of smooth over, I guess you could say, we could see a trend develop above this level if things go right. So certainly keep an eye on it. It's definitely got some volatility to work out. You could be a pretty avid day trader and work with this, but for a swing trader, you're probably going to be better off waiting a little while for this to work out before we start to see an established trend out of this. So just be nimble is all I can really say on this one. If you're in for a long-term investment on this thing, you might be holding the bag for a little while, but there's possibly some alpha available if you were to sell some theta or premium, if you will. If you're into selling options, you might be able to sell some deep out of the money put deep out of the money put options down 10-15 bucks and just kind of generate some sort of income on this thing while you wait for it to settle. You can also, if you sell covered calls, at least above your cost basis, you can find a range to look for strikes on those around the 160 level. If you wanted to generate some income without losing your hat, so to speak, you could do that while this is consolidating. But it has its own set of risk and its own set of parameters that you need to be in control of. So bottom line, be nimble. This one's going to give you some volatility and some range in here for a while before we get going with it. All I can say, thanks a lot and have a wonderful day.